Now available in paperback. Those who refuse the gift of eternal life are condemned to wander in the darkness of eternal night. Get your copy of Eternal Night at online booksellers today. As Marvel Studios has been producing poor quality films over the course of Phase 4, I wonder when we are going to hit rock bottom as related to the terms of quality. And it looks like Marvel Studios is at a point where they're headed towards rock bottom because with the Blade reboot, we see that the wheels have basically fallen off Marvel Studios as related to the quality of their films. Now, your Marvel Studios, when they announced Phase 4, they announced a whole series of movies. Unfortunately, none of these movies seem to interconnect with each other like they did in the first three previous phases, which led to the creation and establishment of the Avengers and then transitioned organically into the Infinity Saga. Unfortunately, around Phase 3, around Captain America Civil War, was when Marvel Studios, as I see it, peaked in terms of quality, and ever since then, they have gone on a major state of decline. And as they've gone on that state of decline, the quality of the films has fallen precipitously with each passing film after Avengers Endgame, because when it comes down to Marvel Studios and their Phase 4, one of the big problems they've had is a sense of direction for all of their films. Now, with the reboot of Blade, we're seeing where all of the problems are really starting to manifest as related to the behind the scenes, because with the Blade reboot, there are serious problems with the script, and the director recently just left the film. Now, when a director leaves a film, there's a real serious issue there, because that means that that director usually cannot put a vision to screen because of problems with the screenplay. And it's looking like this Blade screenplay just doesn't really meet the standards as related to a quality production, because it's been rumored that this 90-page screenplay basically has no real action sequences. And when you're going out here and producing something like an action horror movie like Blade, you really need a lot of action sequences. Because if we take a look at the 1998 Blade, which starred Wesley Snipes, who was one of the producers of the film, what made that film fantastic was the opening sequence, which was in a rave where where all this blood was pouring, and then all of a sudden you have Blade coming in the first 10 minutes and basically taking out all of the vampires. So when you're doing a horror action movie like Blade, you need a lot of action sequences, and this script having next to no action sequences, that's a serious problem for this film. Because if you've got a film that's supposed to be a superhero action movie and you only have two action sequences, that really shows that the screenwriter that was commissioned to do the screenplay was way out of their depth. Because a good screenwriter understands that if you're doing a superhero action movie, you have to have action opening up the movie in order to introduce the main character, show what they want to do, and why we should care. Again, these are the three critical questions a screenwriter like myself has to answer when they are introducing their first 10 pages, which open up the first 10 minutes of the movie. And with your Marvel Studios having a script that, again, only has 2 action sequences in a superhero movie, that is quite troubling, but it just shows how low the standards have fallen at Marvel Studios as related to their movies. And we've seen the standards just precipitously fall when we look at the Phase 4 movies, which really don't have a purpose or a direction. I mean, your Black Widow basically was a irrelevant movie because Natasha was already dead in Avengers Endgame. Then came Eternals, which was a meandering mess because the director was completely out of her depth because she was an art house movie director and not a superhero movie director. And that sequence in Eternals basically was cut and pasted from your Zack Snyder's Justice League. And then we had your other movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Mediocrity, which had a meandering plot that really didn't come together, even though Sam Raimi put together some fantastic action sequences. And then we had Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which had good visuals, but just suffered from a lack of focus as related to character development. And then we had your Thor Love and Thunder, which was a complete jumbled mess. And this was the big problem with Marvel Studios' Phase 4, is that you have all of these different random movies, but none of them really fit organically into each other the way previous Marvel Cinematic Universe movies used to work. Like the first 4 movies, which was Iron Man, Captain America, the First Avenger, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor, they laid the foundation for forming the Avengers, and then that led into Phase 2, which was where we had the Avengers and the Marvel heroes building the world of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then we had Age of Ultron, which further built in, and Guardians of the Galaxy, which built into the Infinity Saga, which led into your Captain America Civil War. And sadly, after Captain America Civil War is where we really started to see the cracks in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then everything just fell apart after Avengers Endgame, which I believe should have been the period at the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But sadly, your Kevin Feige still wanted to go on, and the main reason why your Kevin Feige wanted to go on was because he wanted to go out here and continue making the big box office. Unfortunately, once you hit the peak in the entertainment business, you have to know when to just shut things down and move on. That was one of the smart things that the people at Lucasfilm did after Return of the Jedi. They realized after that 3rd movie, they needed to put a period at the end of things. Unfortunately, your Kevin Feige is still hoping to continue making money on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and sadly, the wheels are starting to fall off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Blade may be the train wreck of a film that basically derails the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because once you start having production problems like issues with a screenplay, that is the foundation for serious issues on a film. And I saw this happen with 2004's Catwoman. That film had a terrible screenplay, and this basically destroyed the career of Academy Award-winning actress Halle Berry and her director Patoff. And the same thing looks like it possibly could happen to Mahershala Ali, another Academy Award-winning actor, who is frustrated about the script he was given. And when you have an actor and a director frustrated about a script, that means that there are, again, serious problems with this production, and that means that this production really needs to be shut down until you can go out here and launch. Now, the big problem with Blade is that Kevin Feige announced that it would be released in November of 2023, but if you don't have a quality script ready, you really can't shoot anything, and this is where the studio really needs to go out here and postpone this movie. Unfortunately, there's so much money spent right now on pre-production that these delays could actually make compound the problems as related to the film. Now, as I see it, again, Kevin Feige shouldn't have announced Blade's reboot already anyway, because there again we had a perfect film in Wesley Snipes' Blade from 1998, and I don't think any remake can go out here and surpass what Wesley Snipes put on screen in Blade, or surpass the fantastic performance that Wesley Snipes presented when he went out here and played Blade. I've always believed that Blade was Wesley Snipes' signature role, because Wesley Snipes basically redefined the Blade character, who was an obscure character before this in the Marvel Universe. But what Wesley Snipes did when he portrayed Blade was he redefined that character, one, and he basically revived the entire superhero movie genre. But if Kevin Feige goes out here and makes this Blade reboot, the irony is that this could be basically the film that puts the nail in the coffin for the superhero movie genre for another decade or so. Because when I look at, again, the problems with the production on this Blade, as somebody who has studied the entertainment industry for over 20 years, I really see a lot of issues that are going to lead to them making a bad film. Because according to reports, they're saying that this screenplay is just absolutely terrible, and I'd have to agree with them. If you have a vampire action movie where there's only 2 action sequences, you are in serious trouble, because my vampire novel, Eternal Night, has multiple action sequences throughout the story, and that book is about, I think, about 260, 270 pages, and there's multiple action sequences, because when you're doing a vampire story, you're going to need scenes where you're going to have vampires biting people. You're going to need to have scenes where vampires are chasing people. You're going to need scenes where vampires are misting. You're going to need scenes where your vampires are just out here wreaking havoc and ripping stuff up. But if you've got a movie with only 2 action sequences, that's a weak vampire movie, and it's an embarrassment for a screenwriter to put a script out there like that, because even the smallest budget vampire movies, like those from Hammer Horror, or one of the low budget productions of the 80s, I mean, these films cost under $1 million. They had multiple action sequences, but here we have a $100 million plus movie in the Blade reboot, and you've got a script that's only got 2 action sequences. And again, that's pitiful when you consider the horror genre. Now, what in the aftermath of the director quitting and Mahershala Ali's frustrations with the production, your Marvel Studios is trying to course correct, but I believe they're not giving themselves enough time to course correct. And what they're trying to do right now is they're going to try to write a brand new screenplay, and I believe that that's not going to work at this point, because a good screenwriter like myself, we need 6 months to a year to go out here and produce a quality script, because when you're working on a horror type story, you have to be able to lay out your research for the lore. You have to go out here and do your research on the source material, and you have to lay out your plot that you're trying to establish. And this is something that just can't get done in a month or 90 days. No, in order to put together a quality script, you're going to need at least 6 months for the first draft and a year to get yourself something together that's solid as related to laying out your story and laying out your plans for your special effects, laying out your plans for your stunts. I mean, as a screenwriter and a novelist who's done horror stories, I understand that you have to lay out what your sequences and your pacing before you start shooting. And what Marvel Studios is doing is making, again, another mistake that a lot of productions do when they get jammed up, and that is they start rushing to go out here and write a script to try to fix the problems instead of saying, look, we need to delay this production. Yeah, we may lose a little money in the short term, but we have to do what's right in the long term as related to putting together a quality production. And that's what Marvel Studios really needs to do, is they need to put this Blade movie on the shelf. And what I really believe your Kevin Feige needs to do, because some are saying that he's stretched too thin, is he really needs to slow down. Now, I've heard from many fans out here who are comic fans, sci-fi fans, and fantasy fans saying that they wouldn't mind waiting for a Marvel Studios film for a couple of years if it meant that the quality would be better. And many of those comic fans, they're saying, hey, I would rather wait a year for a good Marvel Studios film rather than see films rushed out. And your Kevin Feige, as I see it, is rushing out way too many productions at this point. And because he's rushing out so many productions, the quality has declined because he's not really taking the time to do things like vet his writers, which is a problem I saw with Thor, Love and Thunder, and She-Hulk, and even Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Mediocrity. Many of those productions could have been better had your Kevin Feige taken the time to vet people's backgrounds, because hiring somebody like the writers of the She-Hulk show, who were hired basically for their gender, that basically turned that show into trash. And hiring somebody who really needed more time to develop the story, like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, that could have been a great film had they just gone out here and taken their time. And it also could have been a better film had they not had executives interfering and trying to shoehorn the Scarlet Witch as the villain. We really needed Nightmare to be the villain of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But your Kevin Feige, he's not really thinking critically about how his productions work. He's not thinking critically about how his productions flow into each other. And he's not also thinking critically about how his productions are being written and designed, because again, he's rushing and trying to force things together, like with Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, instead of just saying, hey, even though we've announced these films, what we're going to do is hold off on some of them, we're going to wait on some of them, and we're going to work things out to make sure that they are of the highest quality. But instead of doing that, he's trying to rush things out like a bolt of lightning, because he wants to go out here and make big box office, and he wants to sell merchandise. But the irony is that because he's rushing things out, he's not really getting the box office, because the Marvel Cinematic Universe's box office has dropped 50%, and he's not also selling the merchandise, because a lot of the Marvel Legends that they are producing and the other children's toys are rotting on the shelves. And that's something that World Class BSers put on their channel, that this stuff is going to clearance at Ollie's and Big Lots. And it's all because he's trying to rush out films and Disney Plus shows, instead of saying, hey, we need to slow it down and take our time. This was a lesson I learned way back in 2013, when I had a plan that I was going to try to do ISIS series books quarterly. And in 2013, I wanted to go out here and publish 4 ISIS books a year. Unfortunately, as I was trying to do this, the quality of the books was not that great. So when I was looking at one of my books, My Sister, My Frenemy, and I saw so many typos and errors, that's when I said, okay, I need to slow it down. I need to stop. And when I stopped, I wound up looking at taking an assessment of where I was going, and I realized I was making too many mistakes, and I needed to just slow it down. And when I slowed it down, I went from going to try to publish 4 books a year to basically 1 ISIS book a year. And once I did that, I was able to increase the quality of the ISIS series books, and I was also able to increase the quality of many of the SJS Direct books. And I believe that your Kevin Feige needs to do the same thing, because once you slow your quality down, you're going to be able to produce better quality product. Once you slow down and you start making critical assessments of your story, making critical assessments of your characters, and also making a critical assessment of your staff, and making sure that you're hiring quality people, then you can go out here and be able to start producing quality work, and all of those movies can start flowing organically into each other. Because at this point, when I look at what's happening with Blade, this is the film that could possibly be the rock bottom for Marvel Studios. This could be the film that could be the Batman and Robin for Marvel Studios, or the Superman 4, The Quest for Peace for Marvel Studios. Because in the case of your Batman and Robin, where your Joel Schumacher just got overconfident and put all of these puns and jokes in the movie, and just had these crazy visuals, it wound up turning off the audience, and they turned away from superhero movies back in 1997. And in 1986 or 87, Superman 4, The Quest for Peace wound up turning people away because the studio wound up cutting the budget, and it wound up making a poor quality film. And again, the same thing, the same fate could befall Marvel Studios as related to Blade, and it would be again a great irony as related to the superhero movie genre, that a reboot of the film that basically led to the resurgence of the superhero movie would be the thing that led to the end of the superhero genre in the early 21st century. And again, it's all falling apart because of greed from the studios like Disney, and it's also falling apart because people are not taking their time. They're more focused on making money than making a quality film, and that's what I see happening with Marvel Studios' Blade reboot. There's more of a focus on making money instead of making a quality product, and you need to have a balance as related to making a quality product, because you need to have somebody who can go out here and make a commercial product, but you also need a focus on putting the quality on screen. And that's the big problem I see with Blade as related to the production values. I mean, again, 90 pages for a script is a good thing to have as related to film length, but having no action sequences outside of 2 in the film is a problem, because again, if you know the horror genre, and you know that there have to be multiple action sequences, and you know that there has to be a lot of carnage and blood in a horror movie, and this Blade movie, as I see it, had serious problems, because again, you're talking about a PG-13 Blade when the original Blade was an R-rated movie, and horror movies need to be R-rated in order to be of high quality. I mean, this was one of the things that impeded Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Mediocrity, was the PG-13 rating, but you need a hard R if you're going to make a quality horror movie, and that's what you need in order to make a quality horror movie, because you're going to need a lot of gore, a lot of violence. I mean, when I was writing Eternal Night, it's a hard R story, and if you're writing vampires, it's gonna be R-rated. It's gonna have nudity. It's gonna have violence. It's gonna have blood. It's gonna have guts. That's what a horror movie is, and that's what Blade needs to be. Now, a plus is that there's a rumor that Sam Raimi is being asked to direct the Blade reboot, and that would be a plus for the film. And Sam Raimi is a master of horror when we think about all the work he did on Evil Dead, and his visuals basically saved Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Mediocrity from being an abysmal film. So if they get Sam Raimi to direct Blade's reboot, it might be a plus, but the core foundation of a Blade reboot is the screenplay, and if the screenplay isn't up to par, then this film just isn't going to make the cut. Now, if you want to check out the horror stories on the SJS Direct universe, you can pick up my novel Eternal Night, and you can pick up the ISIS series books, ISIS Bride of Dracula, ISIS Night of the Vampires, and ISIS Escape from Transylvania in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find these books on other online booksellers as well. And if you want to see me make more videos about superhero movies and sci-fi and fantasy, you can donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Bride of Dracula. The Goddess Next Door and John Haynes team up to take on the Dark Vampire Lord in this action-packed ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Bride of Dracula in paperback and e-reader at online booksellers today.